Doodle, 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 dandy, cornstalks, rum, and homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie, and that'll make the Yankees fly. Every Yankee shall have on his back a great big pumpkin in a sack, a little molasses and a piece of pork, and away we'll march straight for New York.
Greetings all, I'm Jonathan Kruk, the Hudson Valley Storyteller, here at the Wyck Homestead to share a story strange and true from the trying times known as the American Revolution. When Robert Shurtleff arrived here at the Fishkill Supply Depot, where the Wyck Homestead would stand and kind of preside, it was a meeting place. Generals like Israel Putnam, Heath, McDougal, Gates, and George Washington gathered to discuss strategies for bringing about liberty and independence to the newly united colonies, grandly calling themselves the United States of America. This was quite the sight when Shurtleff arrived. I mean, it reeked of sweat and vomit. It was a place where there were wagons lined up with everything from gunpowder to, cloth, to be sent down to the South, where, toward the end of the American Revolution, most of the fighting occurred. Sometimes the carriages would back up along the post road, so it would take all day before they could move and bring forth what they were delivering to the supply depot. The men here often were in horrible shape. Why, Shurtleff would have heard cursing and seen men running around with just blankets, sometimes without even that much on. Why, General Putnam had to proclaim that down the road a piece, at a place called now Snow Valley, there was a house which just simply served for the men who couldn't be out and about because they literally had no clothes. It was a place where prisoners were about, fighting amongst one another, and Alexander Hamilton observed a mutiny when some men who had come back from a battle decided that they were going to have as much rum as they could drink, and they were going to go back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Well, Putnam had sent out a man to try to stop that, but it ended up becoming a bloody, mutiny. This is what Shurtleff arrived to find. And Shurtleff was exhausted. Kind of a frail looking sort, maybe about 5 feet 6 inches in height. And right out over here, 'twas said, Shurtleff all but collapsed late in the day. Fortunately, Betsy Van Wyck was about. Oh, look at you! Poor thing. You must have been on the road for a long, long time. Exhausted you look. You're not going to be much good coming here to sign on if you're not better rested, and maybe you get a little bit in your belly there. So, she brought him in, here. Maybe came over to the fireplace, and as it was in those days, the stew pot always had something in it. Oh, it could have been maybe some root vegetables dug up from the garden, or maybe a bit of wild garlic, but there it was, simmering in the pot. So Betsy said, sit ye down over there, and I'll bring you a bit. And she brought him a little bowl, and Shurtleff slurped it down. Now the sun went down. Shurtleff said, oh, I thank you, but I must get over and see if, there's a muster. I want to maybe sign on with at least maybe a New England regiment. I'm from just outside of Boston. Oh, you don't look like you're in much shape after all, mine good Herr. Why don't you stay here overnight? I could sleep right here. Well, we're going to have several others here sleeping. They've already got their spot, where you make your bed, that's where you got to lie. But I'll tell you what, my husband won't mind if you can share one side of the bed with him. Your husband? Yes, he's used to it. Oh, we have many like your kind passing through. You're sure it's all right? Yes, don't worry. What's your name? Robert Shurtleff. All right, Robert, you get yourself some rest and you can muster up in the morn. That's just what Shurtleff did. When morning came, a Captain Webb looked out and saw some fellas who were looking to sign on and went to inspect them. When he looked at Shurtleff's hands, he said, "Oh, you've got nimble fingers here. Why, oftentimes we're going to need the likes of you to sew up clothes. As you can see from round the camp, there's many who are going to be wanting for someone who could sew to hold the rags on their backs together. Now, I'm from outside of Boston. You want to sign on? Oh, that I do. There it was. Robert Shurtleff joined on with George Webb, a Massachusetts regiment. Now, it wasn't long before they were sent down to that no man's land, Westchester County, to look out for cowboys. They were the kind who would steal cows from your family farm, drive them down to New York City, and sell them to the British, the redcoats, to feed that army. And when some of those cowboys came by, there was Robert Shurtleff with a couple of sergeants and 30 other soldiers. They held up their muskets and they engaged in a bit of fire, and Shurtleff got a bayonet wound across the top of the brow and also another one there in the thigh. Shurtleff and another soldier, even more desperately wounded, got brought into a barn down outside of Peekskill. And there they awaited the arrival of a doctor who came by, and at once Shurtleff said, "Oh, attend to this fella here. He's in worse condition than me." "Well, you look like you're in rather bad shape as well. You've got a head wound, and did you wound your thigh?" "Oh, no. It's just the blood dripping from my head down there." "Well, let me attend to it." And so the doctor bandaged up Shurtleff's head and took care of the other more desperate soldier and said, "Well, your unit's off. They're heading back toward, maybe to West Point. If not there, they'll be in Fishkill. I'm going to send another doctor from the area around here, an Ebenezer White. He'll attend to you." "Oh, I think I'll be fine." "Well, wait a couple days with this fella and bring him back, either to West Point or across the river to the Fishkill Supply Depot." "All right," said Shurtleff. Well, they stayed in that barn for a few days. "Greetings, Dr. Ebenezer White here. I understand I have two patriotic soldiers to attend to. I'm from not far from round here." "Oh, I'm Private Robert Shurtleff." "Oh, I see you have a bandage there on your head, and is that one on your leg as well?" "No, my leg's fine. It's this fellow over here. He's in need of attention." And Ebenezer White went to work and said, "Well, he's on the mend. The two of you can travel back to the supply depot in Fishkill." And Shurtleff stood up and said, "All right then, we'll be on our way." And Shurtleff began to limp. The doctor said, "Is there something wrong with your leg? Do you need some attention there?" "Oh, no, I've taken care of it." Shurtleff didn't want Ebenezer White to know that when the other doctor had left, before Dr. White came, Shurtleff had taken a pair of, needles and dug into a wound in the thigh to pull out a bullet from those cowboys that had burned into that leg. And Shurtleff also took the needles and sewed up the wound. Once back around here at the Fishkill Supply Depot, new orders had come in, and Shurtleff and the Massachusetts regiment were to go south to Virginia. And there they joined up with Colonel Alexander Hamilton and Major General the Marquis de Lafayette. They had a very important mission. The British had a stronghold, a kind of a fortress, and there were redoubts, walls around it. And if the Americans could take one of those walls out, one of those redoubts, why, they could move their cannons close enough to fire upon that fort and end the siege, the attack at Yorktown. So Hamilton, who had been itching to get a command, now had one. And under his command was, yes, Robert Shurtleff, who mounted up that bayonet, and when the order was given, charge! Shurtleff went running right up along the embankment, clambered over the redoubt, and deflected blows that were coming toward Shurtleff and some of the other men. And they managed to fight off those redcoats, and they took that redoubt, and it wasn't long before the cannon fired, and the British had to surrender at Yorktown, the last big battle of the American Revolution, and it led to the Americans achieving independence there on the battlefield. On the way back, Robert Shurtleff in Philadelphia fell ill with a fever. Don't think it was the pox, but it proved, well, dangerous for Shurtleff. For after the doctor examined the unconscious Robert Shurtleff, the doctor went to the general and said, "This soldier, this fine soldier who fought and was wounded, must be discharged, kicked out of the army at once." Well, Captain Webb wanted to know, "Why are you getting rid of Shurtleff? He's been a fine fighter." "Well, your Robert Shurtleff is no Robert. Why, your Robert Shurtleff is unfit for any more duty. For Robert Shurtleff is a woman." Indeed, Robert Shurtleff was really Deborah Sampson, who had left her home in Massachusetts disguised as a young man to escape having to be an indentured servant. Her parents couldn't keep up with her and their other children, so she essentially got sold to be a servant. And she felt the only way out was to serve in the Continental Army in the fight for independence, and thus traveled all the way down from New England here to Fishkill Landing, and got officially signed on across the river at West Point, and fought and got wounded and treated her own wound, taking out that bullet, and fought at the biggest battle, the final battle at Yorktown. And after her discharge, Deborah Sampson went back to Massachusetts, and not only did she marry and have children, but she was the first woman to receive a military pension, money for her old age from the government of the United States of America, to thank her for her service. So you see, it took all kinds to bring about the liberty and independence we enjoy here in the United States of America. I'm Jonathan Kruk. Thanks for listening to the story of Robert Shurtleff, Deborah Sampson, told here at the Van Wyck Homestead Museum. Thank you.
Doodle, 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 dandy, cornstalks, rum, and homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie, and that'll make the Yankees fly. Every Yankee shall have on his back a great big pumpkin in a sack, a little molasses and a piece of pork, and away we'll march straight for New York. Doodle, 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 dandy, cornstalks, rum, and homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie, and that'll make the Yankees fly. Every Yankee shall have on his back a great big pumpkin in a sack, a little molasses and a piece of pork, and away we'll march straight for New York.